So I chose Rudyard Kipling. His full name was Joseph Rudyard Kipling. He was a person whose parents were both fully British, even though they lived in India. Um, these are his parents. His mother's maiden name was Nee MacDonald, and his dad's name was just John Lockwood Kipling. He was born on December 30th, 1865 in Bombay, India, otherwise sometimes known as Mumbai. And he died in London, England, on the 18th of January when he was 7 years old. He was very British. Him and his parents both performed a lot of traditional British activities and beliefs. This is a photo of where he like the city where he lived, Mumbai, and this was actually taken just a little after he was born. So you can kind of see how they're still pretty technologically advanced because they still have that extreme British influence. And this is the Indian flag which he grew up with, and you can tell how the British rule over India because they literally set the flag over the sigil of India. This is also another photo of Mumbai, and this was taken the exact year he was born. And when I was researching him, I found out that it was super common to be sent away at a super young age to a boarding school. And him and his sister, when he was 5 years old, and his sister was 3 years old, they were sent away to a boarding school in Southsea, Portsmouth, UK. And he said it was traumatic. He ended up saying in a memoir he wrote when he was 65 years old. So after that, when he was 13 years of age, he got sent to a United Services College, and it's a prep school to send you into the military, which he ended up doing. These are just some photos of the school. It was actually pretty big, because they obviously had to have everything, on site. Using the experiences from that school, he wrote the book Stalking Co. And after he graduated from there, he ended up moving back to India, and he worked at several different jobs. It ended up landing at a newspaper, two of them. But I couldn't find any photos of Allahabad, which was the name of the city back then, so there was no photo, obviously, but it must have been pretty big because there were several newspapers, and that's where he worked. And while he worked there, he made 6 collections of short stories: The Soldier's 3, The Rickshaw, The Story of the Gadsbys in black and white, Under the Deodars, and The Wee Willie Winkie, which is probably the most popular and common. So, he was kind of fired, and they kind of had to do it on short notice. So they paid him 6 months worth of salary, and plus he got the money that they paid him because he sold them the rights to his 6 collections of stories. And so using that money, he made his way to London, which he thought was the literary center of the world, which it kind of was. Then once he got to London, he actually ended up touring the west coast of the United States. And he went to San Francisco. These are some photos of what San Francisco looked like when he went. Very different from what we know it to be. And so after touring the west coast, he met this guy. His name was Walcott Ballistier, and he was an American. He was a publishing agent. And so Walcott ended up dying, but he actually had been corresponding with his sister. So after he had died, he telegrammed her and was like, "Would you want to marry me?" pretty much. And so they got married, and they got married during the thick of a really bad epidemic of influenza. And so for their honeymoon, they wanted to go to the United States and then to Japan. So they went to the United States and they went to Japan. But then when they got there, they found out that the bank, the New Oriental Banking Corporation, they had collapsed and failed. So they had to go back to the United States, and on the way back, she had conceived, and so they decided to stay in the U.S., in Vermont, where her family was. And they ended up renting a small cottage. And this photo is kind of just a general overview of what it probably looked like, probably obviously not those buildings, but, really woody, foresty, that kind of stuff. And so their first child, Josephine, was born in a heavy snowstorm, and was born on the 31st and the 30th of the same month. And so, but with the new baby girl, they thought the house was super claustrophobic, and in photos, it's a pretty small house. The house was torn down before it was able to actually be taken photos of, but from what he said, it was really small. So he ended up buying a couple acres, 10 acres to be exact, and he ended up building a house. And these are some pictures of the house. It's pretty decent size, overlooking, probably pretty views. And so while he was in the cottage, he actually thought of writing the Jungle Book. And that's where he wrote it. So there was some international like conflict between the United States government and the British government, and so he kind of felt some dissension there, and also his wife had been fighting with her alcoholic brother. So he decided it was kind of for a change of scene, so he decided to go back to England. And when he went there, he moved this really house. He said it was very depressed architecture. And so they lived there for a little bit. Then they ended up buying this house in East Sussex. And these are photos of that house. It's actually really pretty. It's kind of nice, pretty big. And that's where he also lived until he died. In 1907, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. This is him. And that's it.